The clinking of silverware echoed across the long marble dining table. The night had been perfect, or at least it started that way. The chandeliers shimmered above, the soft hum of classical music filled the mansion, and the laughter from our guests sounded like success itself. I was proud. Proud of how far we had come. Proud of him, my husband, Adrian Cole, the billionaire tech visionary who'd turned nothing into an empire. And somewhere deep down, I was proud of myself too, the girl from a modest neighborhood who had learned how to stand beside him with grace and strength. But that night, that pride was about to shatter. Adrian's mother, Evelyn Cole, had always carried herself like royalty, chin high, voice sharp, judgment sharper. She never accepted me. To her, I was the gold digger, the outsider, the mistake her son refused to correct. "Your dress is lovely," Evelyn began with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Though next time something less cheap-looking might suit the family name better." The room froze. A few guests exchanged uneasy glances. My throat tightened, but I smiled politely, refusing to give her satisfaction. Before I could respond, Adrian reached over and gently squeezed my hand under the table. "Mom," he said calmly, "let's keep the focus on the celebration." "Celebration," she scoffed. "Adrian, your father built this empire with dignity and class. Now look around. Your wife's relatives are sitting here like this is some backyard barbecue." Her words sliced through the evening like glass shattering on marble. I saw the hurt on my parents' faces. My younger brother fidgeted uncomfortably in his chair. I wanted to speak up, but I didn't want to ruin Adrian's company's anniversary dinner. That's when Evelyn leaned forward, voice dripping with venom. "You know what? I've had enough of pretending. You're no longer family." Her words hit me like a punch to the chest. I blinked, trying to hold back tears as every guest turned silent. The chandelier's glow blurred in my eyes. Then something unexpected happened. Adrian stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the marble floor. His expression was unreadable, his voice calm but cold. "Mom, if that's how you feel," he said, "then maybe you shouldn't come around anymore." The entire room gasped. Evelyn's lips parted in disbelief. "What did you just say?" "I said," Adrian repeated, his voice firm, don't come to our home, don't come to our events. You've insulted my wife for the last time." And then he took my hand in front of everyone. "This woman," he said, "is my family." Tears streamed down my face, not from pain this time, but from shock, love, and an overwhelming rush of vindication. Evelyn rose from her chair, shaking with rage. "You'll regret this, Adrian. You'll regret letting her destroy our family." Then she stormed out, her heels echoing down the marble hallway. The room fell into stunned silence. Adrian sat back down, his hand still around mine. "I've been quiet long enough," he whispered. "No one gets to tell you you're not family, not even my mother." And at that moment, I realized this was only the beginning. Because when you stand up to a woman like Evelyn Cole, she doesn't forgive. She retaliates. The mansion felt unusually quiet the next morning. The kind of quiet that creeps under your skin and whispers, something is about to change. Adrian had already left for his early meeting, and the staff moved around with a strange tension, as if they were afraid Evelyn Cole might materialize at any second. After last night's confrontation, I couldn't blame them. I made myself a cup of coffee and stepped out onto the terrace, trying to make sense of everything. The garden below glowed in the soft morning sun, but even the birds seemed hesitant to sing. Adrian had defended me, in front of everyone. For the first time in years, I felt seen, protected. But deep inside, I knew his mother wouldn't take that humiliation quietly. I had seen that fire in her eyes before, the one that burned when she didn't get her way. By noon, I got the first sign. Our family driver, Mr. Grant, who had worked for Adrian's father for over 2 decades, knocked gently on my door. "Ma'am, Mrs. Cole asked me to deliver this to you," he said, handing me a thick white envelope. I hesitated before opening it. Inside was a handwritten note. Her handwriting was elegant, looping, deliberate. "Enjoy your little victory. Let's see how long your fairy tale lasts when I take away everything your husband built." "Evelyn," my hands trembled. I reread the words twice. This wasn't just anger, this was a threat. When Adrian returned home that night, I handed him the note. He stared at it silently for a few seconds, then tore it in half. "She's bluffing," he said, forcing a small smile. "Mom's emotional, but she wouldn't go that far." But I could see the flicker of doubt behind his eyes. 2 weeks passed. Things began to shift. First, one of Adrian's long-term investors suddenly pulled out from a major deal. No explanation, no warning. Then, a rumor began spreading online that I had used my marriage to secure insider access to Adrian's company. Articles appeared overnight. Headlines whispered, "From rags to riches, how a simple girl took over a billionaire's heart and business." My phone buzzed nonstop with messages and comments, most cruel, some mocking. Even our friends started canceling dinner plans, saying they needed space from the drama. And through it all, Evelyn stayed silent, until one night I received a call from an unknown number. "Enjoying the spotlight, dear?" a cold, familiar voice asked. "Evelyn," I whispered. She laughed softly, the kind of laugh that crawled through your veins. "You embarrassed me in front of the world, and now you think you can live happily ever after. I taught Adrian how to build an empire. I can teach him how to burn one too." Before I could respond, she hung up. When I told Adrian, he rubbed his forehead, pacing the living room. "She's bluffing," he said again, but this time his voice wasn't so sure. I stepped closer. "Adrian, what if she's not? What if she's using her connections to sabotage you?" He exhaled. "I'll handle it, don't worry." But I did worry, because every time he said those words, he looked more tired, more distracted. I could see it in his eyes. The empire he had built brick by brick was slowly being chipped away by his own mother. Then came the night that broke everything. Adrian was working late at the office when his business partner, Marcus, called me in a panic. "Turn on the news," he said. I grabbed the remote and the screen flickered to life. A breaking news headline ran across the bottom. "Coal industries under investigation for fraud and tax evasion." My heart dropped. They showed documents, leaked emails, and anonymous sources claiming Adrian had funneled money through offshore accounts. But I knew him, he would never do that. Within hours, social media exploded. Stock prices fell. Reporters camped outside our gates. And in the chaos, Evelyn made her move. She released a statement. "It pains me as a mother to see my son led astray by people who never had our family's best interests at heart." She didn't mention my name, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew. By morning, my face was all over the internet, the woman who destroyed the Cole legacy. Adrian came home exhausted, his suit wrinkled, his eyes hollow. "She got to the board," he said quietly. "They want me to step back while the investigation goes on." I swallowed hard. "So, what happens now?" He looked at me for a long moment. "Now we fight." But I could tell his faith was shaking. That night, as I lay beside him, I stared into the darkness, my mind spinning. Evelyn wasn't just angry, she was ruthless. And if she could manipulate investors and the media, what else could she do? I realized something chilling. This wasn't about money or power anymore. It was about control. She wanted to own him again. But what she didn't know was that I had something she didn't. The truth. And soon she'd regret ever underestimating me. The morning after the scandal broke, I woke to silence. No reporters outside, no calls from investors, just silence that felt heavier than any noise. Adrian hadn't slept. He sat at the edge of the bed, elbows on his knees, his phone glowing in his hand. "They froze all our accounts," he said without looking up. "Every transaction is under review. Even our home security staff haven't shown up." I sat up, my chest tightening. "You think your mother—" "I know it's her," he said, voice low. "She's the only one with that kind of access and influence." He stood abruptly, pacing across the room. "She's using Dad's old network, board members, government contacts, private bankers. She's turning everything he built into a weapon." I watched him, helpless but determined. "Then we fight back," I said. He shook his head. "I don't want you involved, Emily. She's not like other people." "My mother doesn't lose gracefully. She destroys what she can't control." His words haunted me all day, because Evelyn Cole wasn't just a bitter mother-in-law, she was a strategist. She built her power around influence, charm, and secrets. And if we were ever going to survive, I needed to understand what kind of darkness she was hiding. That evening, I went into Adrian's father's old study, a place Evelyn never let me touch. Dust covered the mahogany desk, and the faint smell of cigar smoke still lingered. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with financial ledgers, handwritten notes, and old family photographs. One picture stopped me cold. It was a portrait of the Cole family, Adrian as a teenager, his father proud and strong, and Evelyn standing elegantly beside them. But there was someone else, a young woman I didn't recognize, standing close to Adrian's father, her smile warm, her hand resting gently on his arm. Her eyes looked hauntingly familiar. I turned the photo over. On the back, written in elegant cursive, "To my beloved from C." My pulse quickened. "C." I opened the nearest file cabinet and began searching. After an hour, I found a thin folder tucked behind old tax documents. Inside were handwritten letters, love letters from Catherine, dated almost 20 years ago. "I wish I could see you tonight. Evelyn suspects something. She's not blind, but I can't stay away from you." I covered my mouth, heart pounding. Adrian's father had been having an affair. And then another letter, one that made my blood run cold. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll keep the truth safe for Adrian's sake. The letter was dated just weeks before his father's sudden death in a car accident. I didn't believe in coincidences anymore. When Adrian came home, I handed him the letters. He read them slowly, his hands trembling. "My father," he whispered. "He didn't die from a brake failure, did he?" I shook my head. "I don't think so. Evelyn must have known about Catherine. She probably found out and made sure he never left her." Adrian's eyes filled with a mix of grief and fury. All these years, I thought Mom was mourning him. She was covering up what she'd done. He dropped the letters on the desk. "We need proof, something the police can't ignore." I nodded. "And we need someone who knows how she operates." The next morning, I visited someone Adrian hadn't spoken to in years, his father's former assistant, Martin Gray. He was a quiet man who now ran a small accounting firm on the outskirts of the city. When I arrived, he looked surprised. "Emily Cole, I never expected to see anyone from that family again." "I'm here because of Evelyn," I said. "We know what she did. I need your help to prove it." He studied me for a moment, then sighed. "You're brave, I'll give you that. But you don't understand what you're walking into." "Then tell me," I insisted. Martin hesitated, then opened a locked drawer. He pulled out a flash drive. "Your father-in-law suspected his wife was moving money illegally through shell accounts. He asked me to trace them, but before he could confront her, he died. I kept everything. I couldn't go public. I was scared." He handed me the drive. "Everything's on here. The accounts, the offshore transfers, the false charities. Evelyn didn't just kill his heart, she killed his legacy." I took it, my hands shaking. "Thank you," he nodded solemnly. "Be careful, Mrs. Cole. If she realizes you have that, she won't stop until she gets it back." That night, I returned home and told Adrian everything. We plugged in the drive and watched as rows of transactions appeared, millions in transfers to hidden accounts, some under fake charity names, others routed through shell companies. "She's been laundering money for over a decade," Adrian said, his voice tight, "and using Dad's name to do it." Then we found something even more shocking, a current transfer request scheduled under Adrian's name. "She's framing you," I whispered. Adrian's face went pale. "That's why the investigation started. She planted the documents. She's trying to erase me completely." I swallowed hard. "Then we expose her before she can finish." He looked at me with a mix of fear and admiration. "You're not afraid anymore." I smiled faintly. "She made me afraid for too long, not anymore." Later that night, as the house slept, I couldn't. I kept thinking about the woman in the photo, Catherine. Who was she really? And what happened to her after the letters stopped? I pulled out the last letter again, rereading the final line. "If anything happens to me, look in the place where the roses never bloom." I froze. Evelyn's garden. There was one spot behind the greenhouse, a patch where nothing ever grew, no matter how much she pruned or replanted. She used to say it was cursed. At dawn, I went outside with a flashlight, heart racing. The air was cold and still. I knelt and started digging carefully through the soil. After a few minutes, the shovel hit something solid, metal. I pulled out a small tin box, rusted and damp. Inside, wrapped in plastic, was a USB drive and a faded photograph, Catherine holding a baby boy. Not Adrian, a second son. The shock nearly knocked the breath out of me. Evelyn's husband had fathered another child, and Evelyn must have known. I whispered into the dawn light, "That's what she's hiding." Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned sharply. Evelyn stood there, her silk robe flowing, eyes blazing with fury. "Curiosity," she said coldly, "has always been your greatest flaw." She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "I warned you to stay out of my family's business. Now you've left me no choice." And before I could react, she reached into her robe pocket and pulled out her phone, dialing someone. "Do it," she said, eyes locked on mine. "Now." The morning sun crept through the mansion windows, casting golden streaks across the polished floors, but the warmth didn't reach me. Not after what I had found in Evelyn's garden. Not after the look in her eyes when she called that mysterious number and said, "Do it." For a second, everything stood still. Then I heard a faint roar of an engine in the distance. Too close, too fast. My heart stopped. Adrian. I dropped the tin box and sprinted toward the driveway. Just as I reached the front steps, a black SUV screeched to a halt near the gates. Tires smoked, and the sound of metal scraping against stone echoed through the air. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear Evelyn shouting behind me. I ran until my knees hit the gravel and saw Adrian's car stop just inches from the wreckage of the fallen gate. He jumped out, confused but unharmed. "What's going on?" he yelled. Evelyn stood at the door, calm as a statue, her robe fluttering in the breeze. "A warning," she said coldly. "That's all. I told you both to stop." Adrian's expression hardened. "You called this in, didn't you?" She didn't answer, just turned and walked back inside, her silence confirming everything. That was the moment Adrian broke. He'd always tried to see some shred of humanity in her, always believed she was just angry or hurt. But after that morning, his voice carried steel. "She wants a war," he said. "Then she'll get one." Later that day, we sat together in his father's old office, the tin box and the USB drive between us. Adrian plugged it in, and a folder opened instantly, dozens of hidden documents, photos, and a single video file labeled for my son. He hesitated, then clicked it. The screen flickered, showing a man sitting behind a desk, Adrian's father, Richard Cole. His face was older than the photos I'd seen, tired, but his eyes were full of regret. "If you're watching this, son, then the truth has already found its way to you. Evelyn isn't who she once was. She's protecting someone. Your half-brother, Samuel." Adrian's breath caught. "She's been funneling money into trust accounts for him, off the record." I loved Catherine once, but Evelyn's jealousy became dangerous. She threatened to destroy everything if I ever told the truth. "If anything happens to me, protect your future, Adrian. Don't let her win." The video ended, leaving only silence. Adrian leaned back, eyes wide and wet with disbelief. "I have a brother, and she hid it all this time." I nodded. "And she's been stealing from the company to fund his life." He stood up suddenly. "We find him." It took 2 days of quiet searching before we got a lead. The trust accounts led us to a foundation in Boston under a fake name, Samuel West. When we arrived at the modest office building, a young man stepped out. His resemblance to Richard Cole was unmistakable, the same dark eyes, the same strong jaw, but his expression was softer, uncertain. "Samuel West?" Adrian asked. The young man frowned. "Who's asking?" "I'm Adrian Cole," he said slowly. "Your brother." Samuel froze, disbelief flickering across his face. "That's not possible." "It is," I said gently, holding out a photo of Richard. "Your father, he wanted you to know the truth." Samuel looked at the photo for a long time, his voice trembling. "My mother told me he died before I was born. I didn't know he had another family." Adrian's expression was a mix of pain and awe. "He did, and our mother, Evelyn, kept you hidden. She's been using your name to launder money. She made you part of this without your knowledge." Samuel's eyes widened. "I've been signing papers for her company for years. She said it was for tax purposes. She said she was helping me with tuition and housing." Adrian clenched his jaw. "She's not helping you, she's framing both of us." That night, the three of us sat in a quiet hotel room, going through the data from the USB drive and Samuel's emails. The puzzle finally made sense. Evelyn had built a second identity using her hidden son to create shell companies. "She made sure no one would question her," I said. "She had 2 sons, one legitimate, one secret, and she controlled both from the shadows." Samuel looked devastated. "I didn't ask for this. I don't want her money. I just want to know who I really am." Adrian put a hand on his shoulder. "Then help me stop her. Help me clear our father's name." The next morning, we held a press conference. Adrian walked on stage, calm but commanding, Samuel standing beside him. Cameras flashed. Adrian spoke clearly, every word steady and deliberate. "Recent allegations against my company are false. Evidence has come to light proving that my late father's estate was manipulated through hidden accounts created by my mother, Evelyn Cole. She diverted millions of dollars to private accounts using stolen identities, including one belonging to my half-brother, Samuel West." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "We're turning over all evidence to the authorities and opening every record to public review. The Cole legacy was built on integrity, and today it's time to reclaim it." The reporters shouted questions, flashes blinding us. But I saw something else. A woman standing in the back, disguised in sunglasses, frozen in fury. Evelyn. Her world had just started to crumble. That evening, after the press conference aired, the news broke like wildfire. Billionaire heir exposes mother in major fraud scandal. Evelyn Cole's empire under federal investigation. Within hours, Evelyn's accounts were frozen. The board suspended her from every advisory position. But I knew her too well to think it was over. That night, a car pulled up outside the hotel. I looked down from the window and saw her step out, calm, collected, wearing her trademark pearls like armor. She walked into the lobby head high as if the entire world didn't just see her empire collapse. When she reached our suite, she didn't knock. She pushed the door open and stared at Adrian and Samuel. So, she said softly, you both think you've won. Adrian rose. This isn't a game, Mother, this is justice. Her eyes burned with contempt. Justice, you humiliated me publicly. You destroyed everything I built. I stepped forward. No, Evelyn, you destroyed it when you started treating your family like pawns. Her voice turned to ice. You think this is over, you have no idea who you're dealing with. Then she leaned close to me, her perfume sharp, her whisper colder than death. Men forgive Emily, mothers don't. She turned and walked out, her heels echoing like a countdown. And in that moment, I knew she wasn't done. Evelyn Cole was wounded, but not defeated. Somewhere behind that elegant mask, she was already planning her next move. The news of Evelyn Cole's downfall swept through every media outlet like wildfire. For the first time in years, her name wasn't whispered with admiration but with disgrace. Headlines screamed across every screen. Billionaire matriarch exposed by her own sons. Evelyn Cole's hidden empire of lies. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't, because I knew her too well. Evelyn never lost gracefully. And when a woman like her falls, she drags others down with her. The days that followed the press conference were a blur of interviews, legal meetings, and constant phone calls. Adrian and Samuel worked with investigators to turn over every document from the flash drives and old ledgers. The FBI agents assured us, once we verify these, she'll be facing multiple counts of fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. But even as we tried to rebuild, something didn't feel right. At night, I'd look out the hotel window, half expecting to see her watching from the shadows. I didn't have to wait long to find out how far she'd go. 3 days later, Adrian got a call from our attorney. His voice was strained. Adrian, I'm afraid Evelyn filed a defamation suit against you, Emily, and Samuel. Adrian blinked. She's suing us after everything she's done? Yes, the attorney sighed. She's claiming you forged the documents to frame her. She's leveraging every contact she still has in the business world. She's also claiming that Samuel is Richard's biological son. I froze. What? She's insisting Samuel's an imposter hired to ruin her reputation, he continued. She's demanding a DNA test and financial compensation for emotional damage. Adrian's fist hit the desk. She's twisting everything. The lawyer nodded grimly. That's what she does best. When Samuel heard the news, he was devastated. She's trying to erase me again, he said quietly. First she hides me, now she says I don't exist. I sat beside him. She's desperate, Samuel. When powerful people lose control, they rewrite the story. He looked down, voice trembling. What if she's right? What if I'm not who I think I am? I reached for his hand. You are Richard's son. The resemblance, the letters, the DNA from that old toothbrush we found, it all matches. She's bluffing because she's cornered. Adrian nodded. We'll prove it in court. The first hearing was brutal. Evelyn entered the courtroom wearing a crisp white suit, diamonds sparkling on her ears as if she'd come for a gala instead of judgment. Her composure was immaculate, her expression dead calm. When she took the stand, her words were a masterclass in manipulation. My son has always been easily influenced, she began, voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. He's blinded by that woman, she glared at me, who only married him for his wealth. She's turning him against his own mother. The courtroom murmured. Then she gestured toward Samuel. And as for him, I've never seen that boy in my life. They found someone who looks like my late husband and crafted this entire charade to destroy me. Adrian stood to object, but the judge silenced him. Evelyn continued her monologue, painting herself as the victim, a grieving widow betrayed by her ungrateful children. When it was our turn, Adrian rose to speak. His voice, calm but full of fire, echoed through the room. My mother taught me how to win, he said, but she never taught me how to be decent. Every lie she's told today is built on money she stole, trust she broke, and lives she ruined. This isn't about revenge, it's about truth. He turned to Samuel. This man standing beside me isn't a fraud. He's family, my brother, our father's son, and I won't let her erase him again. A hush fell over the courtroom. Evelyn's mask cracked for the first time, her lips tightened, her eyes glimmered with rage. After the hearing, as we left the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Evelyn's car pulled up beside ours, and she rolled down the tinted window. Enjoy the spotlight, she said smoothly. It's short-lived. What are you planning now? I asked coldly. Her smile sharpened. You'll see. And she drove off. That night, things took a darker turn. Our lawyer called again, panic in his voice. Adrian, the federal agents just informed us your name is back in the fraud case. Someone submitted new documents that implicate you directly. What documents? Adrian asked. They look authentic. They show your signature authorizing illegal transfers dated after your father's death. Adrian's face went white. That's impossible. They were sent anonymously, the lawyer said, but the metadata shows they came from Evelyn's old account. I gasped. She's framing him again. Adrian clenched his jaw. Then she forged my signature. Even worse, the lawyer continued. She submitted voice recordings of what sounds like you admitting guilt. My heart dropped. She deepfaked his voice. Adrian's hands trembled. She's not just fighting, she's trying to bury us. We spent the next 2 days gathering every shred of digital proof. Samuel reached out to a cybersecurity expert he knew, who confirmed the recordings were artificially generated, highly convincing but fake. When Adrian saw the report, he exhaled shakily. She's crossing every line. I nodded. And that means she's scared. By the time we returned to court, Evelyn's empire was unraveling faster than she could control. Her bank accounts were frozen. Her closest allies had turned on her. Even her longtime lawyer resigned after the forged audio was exposed. Still, she refused to surrender. When the judge presented the evidence, authenticity reports, timestamps, the truth about the offshore accounts, Evelyn didn't flinch. But when Samuel handed over the DNA results proving his paternity beyond doubt, something inside her finally broke. Her fingers trembled, her jaw clenched, and for a moment, the mighty Evelyn Cole looked small. The judge's voice cut through the silence. The court finds substantial evidence of fraud, manipulation, and obstruction of justice. Evelyn Cole will be remanded into custody pending further investigation. The gavel struck. Evelyn's eyes locked on me as the officers approached. You think you've won, she hissed. You'll regret taking my son from me. I stepped closer, my voice steady. No, Evelyn, you lost him the day you tried to own him. She was led away. Adrian stood motionless, tears glistening in his eyes. She was my mother, he whispered, and I still don't understand why she hated you so much. I touched his hand gently. Because I loved you without wanting to control you. That's something she never understood. Samuel looked at us, his voice quiet but resolute. She may have destroyed everything she touched, but maybe now we can start over. Adrian nodded, pulling both of us close. No more secrets, no more power games. Just truth. That night, as we stood on the balcony overlooking the city lights, I thought about everything we'd lost, our peace, our trust, our innocence. But we'd gained something far more powerful. We had exposed the truth. We had broken the cycle. And somewhere in a cold, dark cell, Evelyn Cole finally faced the one thing she could never manipulate: consequences. It had been 2 months since the courtroom showdown. The day Evelyn Cole's empire fell, the day our lives finally exhaled after years of suffocating beneath her shadow. Yet, freedom didn't feel like peace. Reporters still hovered outside our gates, hungry for the next headline. Adrian's company was rebuilding its image. Samuel was still adjusting to his identity, and I was still waking up every night from dreams where Evelyn's voice whispered in the dark, "You'll regret it." Because even in defeat, Evelyn Cole's presence lingered, like the faint scent of perfume that never quite leaves a room. Adrian poured himself coffee one morning, exhaustion written across his face. "The board's back on my side," he said quietly. "But investors are nervous. They think the family scandal makes us unpredictable." I sighed. "You can rebuild their trust. You've done it before." He nodded but didn't look convinced. "They want me to rebrand the company, distance it from the Cole name entirely." "That's not a bad thing," I said gently. "Sometimes you have to let the past die before you can grow again." He gave a faint smile. "You sound like Dad." I smiled back, though inside I wondered if even he would have known how to fix this mess. Samuel visited often, usually late in the evenings. He'd sit in the garden, the same garden where Evelyn had hidden so many of her secrets, and stare at the city skyline. "I still don't know who I am," he admitted one night. "I'm Richard Cole's son, Evelyn's secret, your brother's mistake, the world's headline." "You're more than their secrets," I told him. "You get to write your own story now." He smiled faintly, eyes glistening. "You sound like family." "I am," I said softly. "And no matter what Evelyn did, that doesn't change." He nodded slowly. "Then maybe that's what she hated most. You made us a family without her permission." A week later, a letter arrived. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable, elegant, deliberate, and sharp as glass. I turned it over in my hands before opening it. Inside, written in perfect cursive, "Emily, you took everything from me, my sons, my legacy, my name. Yet somehow I can't hate you completely. Maybe because I see too much of myself in you. You're strong. You fight for what you love. You protect your family like a soldier. But remember this, love makes people dangerous. It made me ruthless. Made you brave, don't let it destroy you too. Evelyn Cole, my breath caught. For the first time, her words didn't sound like a threat. They sounded like reflection. When Adrian came home, I handed him the letter. He read it quietly, then folded it. She never apologizes, he said. No, I agreed. She never will, but maybe this is the closest she'll ever come. He stared out the window, voice low. She's in prison, Emily, alone, and part of me still wishes things could have been different. I touched his arm. That part of you is what makes you better than her. Despite everything, the world moved on. Cole Industries was rebranded to Ardent Technologies, symbolizing new beginnings. Investors slowly returned, and the public's fascination with the scandal began to fade. But life after war is never simple. One afternoon, I found Adrian sitting in the study, holding one of his father's old pocket watches. Do you ever think, he asked, that all of this happened because I was too afraid to stand up to her sooner? I shook my head. It happened because she was afraid of losing control. You didn't cause her cruelty, you survived it. He looked at me for a long time, then smiled. You've become the voice I should have listened to all along. I smiled back, resting my hand over his. You finally did, that's why we're still standing. Weeks later, Samuel came with news. They're transferring her, he said quietly. To a facility upstate, minimum security. Adrian frowned. How'd you find out? She wrote me too. He handed Adrian a letter. It was short, just one line. I never stopped protecting you, Samuel sighed. I don't know if that's her guilt or another manipulation. Adrian nodded. Probably both. I glanced at the two of them. The brothers fate had tried to keep apart. And I realized that maybe Evelyn's greatest failure had also become her greatest punishment. The sons she tried to control had found each other and no longer needed her. That evening I went to the garden again. The same spot where it had all begun, the patch of earth where Evelyn's secrets once hid beneath the soil. But this time I didn't dig for truth. I planted roses, bright red ones. As I covered the last seed with soil, Adrian wrapped his arms around me from behind. Starting over. He asked softly. I nodded. This time they'll bloom. He smiled faintly, kissing my forehead. You know, I used to think family was about blood, but now I realize it's about choice. And we choose each other, I whispered. Always. A month later, the final chapter of Evelyn's story arrived, quite literally. A newspaper headline read, Disgraced businesswoman Evelyn Cole found dead in prison cell, suspected heart failure. The world gasped. We didn't. Adrian sat silently at the kitchen table, staring at the photo of his mother. She looked peaceful, almost human. I thought I'd feel relief, he said, but I just feel empty. I placed my hand over his. Because you loved her despite everything. That doesn't make you weak, Adrian, it makes you whole. He looked up, eyes soft. She was a storm, and you were my calm. Tears welled in my eyes. Then let's make sure her storm ends with us. He nodded slowly, pulling me close. No more secrets. No more wars, just peace. That night, as the city lights shimmered beyond the windows, I looked around our home, the home that had once been built on fear, now filled with quiet strength. The ghost of Evelyn Cole would always linger somewhere in the shadows, but for the first time, she no longer frightened me. Because she'd lost. Not in court, not in headlines, but in legacy. Her empire had collapsed, but from its ashes, we had built something she could never understand, a real family. And as I watched the roses outside sway gently in the night breeze, I whispered, Rest now, Evelyn. The war is over. 3 weeks after Evelyn Cole's death, life finally began to resemble normalcy. The press had moved on to newer scandals, the company's stock had stabilized, and for the first time in years, our mansion no longer felt like a battlefield. The ghosts had quieted, at least, that's what we believed. But peace in the Cole family never lasted long. One rainy afternoon, Adrian received a call from a law firm in Manhattan. Mr. Cole, the lawyer said, his voice steady but hesitant. We're contacting you regarding your late mother's will. There are conditions you'll need to hear in person. Adrian frowned. Conditions? I thought her estate was frozen during the investigation. Yes, the lawyer replied. But Mrs. Cole left something specific, for you and for Emily. My name. When Adrian hung up, he looked both wary and exhausted. She's gone, but she's still finding ways to control us. He muttered. I touched his hand gently. Then we'll face it together, whatever it is. The next morning, we drove to the law office, a tall glass building downtown that seemed to touch the clouds. The rain had turned to a light drizzle, the city gleaming silver under the gray sky. Inside, the conference room was minimalist and cold, just like Evelyn would have liked it. A man in his 50s, wearing a navy suit, greeted us with a polite smile. "Mr. and Mrs. Cole," he said. "My name is Robert Shaw. I represented your mother for over 20 years. She left very detailed instructions for this meeting." He opened a sleek black folder, revealing a sealed envelope. Adrian tensed. "Let's just get this over with." Robert nodded and slid the envelope across the table. Her handwritten statement, dated 2 weeks before her death. Adrian hesitated, then tore it open. The letter was written in Evelyn's signature looping cursive. Her words were cold, deliberate, each sentence crafted like a weapon. "To my son, Adrian Cole, if you are reading this, it means I have left this world behind. But death does not absolve truth. You were always my greatest creation and my greatest disappointment. I built an empire so you could rule it, yet you surrendered it for love. Still, I cannot hate you completely. I have left something that belongs to you and something that belongs to her." My breath caught. "To Emily, you think you've won. You believe you've conquered me with your soft words and your loyalty. But you forget empires are not destroyed, they evolve. Look deeper, Emily. The truth you think you uncovered was only the beginning. In the safety deposit box attached to this will, you will find documents that will change everything you think you know about me and about your husband." Adrian's hand tightened around the paper. "What is this?" he demanded. Robert cleared his throat and handed over a small brass key. "Your mother left a box under her maiden name, Evelyn Parker. It's here in the building. She requested it be opened only by both of you together." We followed him down to the lower floor. The vault room smelled faintly of metal and dust. Rows of boxes stretched into the distance like silent sentinels of forgotten secrets. Robert found the one marked E. Parker, 218, and stepped back. "Whenever you're ready." Adrian slid the key into the lock. It clicked open easily, almost too easily, as if it had been waiting. Inside, there was a single thick envelope and an old black USB drive. He handed the drive to me. "Let's see what the Queen left behind." Back in the office, Robert plugged it into a laptop. The screen blinked to life, showing a single folder labeled, "Truth for my son." Adrian double-clicked it. A video began to play. Evelyn sat in her study, wearing one of her signature pearl necklaces. Her face was older, tired, but her eyes still carried that cold precision. "If you're watching this, Adrian, I'm likely gone. I know you despise me, and perhaps you're right to, but I've done what I had to for you." Adrian's jaw clenched. "You think you built your company from scratch. You didn't. The seed money that started Cole Industries wasn't your father's savings. It was mine, money inherited from the Parker Family Trust, tied to a network of international investors. And there's more, much more." She paused, her lips curling faintly. "You should know the truth about your wife, too." My pulse spiked. Emily's father, Robert Hastings, wasn't just a struggling engineer. He worked for me for years. He handled confidential patents, many of which became the foundation of your company's first innovations. When he died, I made sure Emily crossed your path. She didn't know it, of course, but I did. I made her your perfect match. The air in the room turned to ice. I froze, my voice trembled. "That's not true, she's lying." Adrian stared at the screen, pale and silent. "My dear son, remember this. Every move you made, every love you believed was destiny, it all began with me." The video ended. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the computer. I turned to Adrian, heart pounding. "Adrian, you have to believe me, I had no idea. My father died when I was 8. I didn't even know she knew him." He said nothing, his eyes still locked on the blank screen. "Adrian, please," I whispered. "You know me." He finally looked at me, eyes filled with conflict. "I want to, but how do I ignore that?" That night, the mansion was silent again, but not the peaceful kind. Adrian barely spoke. He spent hours in his office, replaying the video, reading through the documents from the box. I could hear the faint sound of papers rustling through the walls, like whispers of the past mocking me. By midnight, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to his office. He was sitting in the dark, his laptop screen the only light. "Adrian," I said softly, "we can't let her win again." He looked up slowly. "She manipulated everything, even you. Don't you see? We're all just pieces in her game." "Then end the game," I said firmly. "Right here, right now. She's gone, Adrian. You're still alive. Don't let her control you from the grave." He exhaled shakily, staring at me for a long moment. "If I find proof you were telling the truth, I'll burn every memory she left behind." I nodded. "Then let's find it, together." But as I walked out of the room, I caught sight of the last page of Evelyn's letter lying on the desk. One final line I hadn't noticed before, written in smaller, shakier handwriting. "The real question is whether Emily knew the truth. It's whether she remembers." A chill ran down my spine, because for the first time, I realized Evelyn's games weren't over. And somewhere buried in the past, there might be a truth I didn't even know I was hiding. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. The The sky hung low and heavy over the city, and every drop that struck the mansion's windows seemed to echo my thoughts, unrelenting, cold, and full of unanswered questions. Since we'd opened Evelyn's box, silence had become our language. Adrian barely spoke to me, and when he did, his words were careful, cautious, as if we were both walking on glass. But beneath his calm surface, I could feel the storm brewing. The revelation that Evelyn had supposedly orchestrated our entire relationship. It was poison, eating away at everything we'd built. And yet something about her final line, "It's not whether Emily knew the truth, but whether she remembers," haunted me, because deep down I felt it. A tiny, unshakable sense that there was something I couldn't remember, something buried. That night I pulled out an old box of photographs from the attic. My father's smile greeted me from a dozen faded prints, his arms around me, the world warm and safe. But as I sorted through them, one photo made my breath catch. It was taken in a laboratory, white walls, glass tables, technical equipment everywhere. My father stood beside another person, the face turned slightly away from the camera. The woman had dark hair, perfectly styled, a string of pearls around her neck. Evelyn Cole. I stared, frozen. My pulse pounded in my ears. On the back of the photo, in my father's neat handwriting, were the words, "Prototype 4 Cole Project, 1998. I didn't understand. Prototype? Project? I grabbed my phone and called Adrian immediately. He didn't answer. Panic rising, I took the picture and went to his office. The door was half open. I pushed it gently. Adrian was sitting at his desk, eyes red-rimmed, surrounded by piles of old documents from his father's archives. When he saw me, he looked exhausted. "I've been trying to disprove her claims," he said flatly. "But everything matches. Your father's name appears on several patent files from the early days of Cole Industries." I hesitated, holding out the photo. "Then you should see this." He took it, scanning it quickly. His eyes darkened. "She wasn't lying. I didn't know Adrian," I said desperately. "I was a child. I don't remember this, any of it." He rubbed his temples, exhaling slowly. "I know, I don't know what to believe anymore." Later that night, sleep refused to come. My mind replayed the image over and over. Evelyn beside my father, their expressions unreadable. So I did the one thing Evelyn wouldn't expect. I went digging deeper. In the archives of an old engineering research center, my father's last known workplace, I found his project logs. Most were standard reports. But one entry, dated 3 months before his death, stopped me cold. "Met with EC again today. She insists we finish the neural interface prototype before the board presentation." I warned her it's not safe. Memory alteration in human subjects isn't reversible yet. My heart nearly stopped. Memory alteration, I read on, my hands shaking. "She mentioned a test subject, female, early 20s, said she'd volunteered. I don't know who she is, but I have a bad feeling. I fear what Evelyn is becoming." The world blurred around me. Memory alteration, a test subject, a volunteer. My stomach twisted as a cold, dreadful thought formed. What if that subject was me? Suddenly, pieces began clicking together. The strange blank spaces in my childhood, the sudden move after my father's death, Evelyn's fixation on me marrying Adrian. Was my past edited? By morning, I decided I needed answers that only one person could give, Samuel. He met me at a small cafe downtown, away from the mansion's shadows. When I showed him the photo and the research log, his face went pale. "You're saying Evelyn was experimenting with memory manipulation?" I nodded. "And she knew my father. He warned her. I think she erased something from my memory when I was a child, maybe even something about how he died." Samuel exhaled slowly. "Emily, my mother didn't just manipulate people, she designed them." I looked at him sharply. "What do you mean?" "She used to talk about how emotions were weaknesses, that if she could correct the way people remembered pain, she could create loyalty." My hands trembled. "You think she did that to me?" He hesitated, then said softly, "I think she tried." That night I went back to the garden, the place where Evelyn's secrets had always slept beneath the soil. I sat there, staring at the dark earth, and whispered, "What did you do to me, Evelyn?" And then, like a whisper breaking through fog, something shifted in my mind. A flash, bright, fragmented like a broken film reel, my father shouting. Evelyn's voice, calm but cold. "You'll thank me one day." A blinding light. And then nothing. Gasped, clutching my head. My heart pounded, my breath short. It wasn't a dream. It was a memory, one I was never supposed to have. When Adrian found me later, I was sitting in the dark, the photo clenched in my hand. "I remember," I whispered. He knelt beside me, worry in his eyes. "What do you mean?" "She used me, Adrian. When I was little, she tested her memory technology on me. She erased something about my father's death." He must have tried to stop her and she silenced him. Adrian's eyes widened in horror. You're saying she killed him? Tears filled my eyes. Or made me forget how. He wrapped his arms around me, holding me as I trembled. We'll find the truth, I swear it. The next morning, Adrian called an old associate of his father's, Dr. Langford, a retired neurologist who had once worked with Evelyn. When he heard my name, there was a long silence on the line. Then he said quietly, she promised she'd never tell you. My blood ran cold. Tell me what? He sighed. Emily, your father didn't die in an accident. He was part of a classified experiment Evelyn funded, one meant to prove her theories on memory control. When he tried to shut it down, she erased parts of his research and used his daughter as proof it worked. I felt the world tilt. She used me. Yes, he said softly. You were her first successful subject. I hung up the phone and looked at Adrian. All this time, Evelyn's power hadn't come from manipulation. It came from control. She had rewritten memories, reshaped lives, built empires on the very idea that she could alter truth itself. And now, even from the grave, her shadow had reached out to reclaim what she'd created. Adrian cupped my face gently. She might have changed your past, he said, but she doesn't control your future. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I want to remember everything, no matter how painful. I need to end her story for good. He nodded. Then we'll find a way to unlock it, together. As the sun rose, painting the sky gold, I looked at the mansion one more time. It wasn't just a home, it was a monument to Evelyn's lies. But now I finally understood what she feared most, not losing power, not losing control. She feared the truth, and I was about to bring it all to light. The morning I decided to uncover everything, the world outside looked deceptively calm. The garden Evelyn once ruled over shimmered with dew, the roses I'd planted glowing red in the soft sunlight. But inside me, a storm raged. For years, Evelyn Cole had played God, rewriting memories, building empires, bending people's lives to her will. Now I was done being her creation. Adrian and I sat across from Dr. Langford in his quiet, book-filled study. The air smelled faintly of old paper and rain. He looked nervous, his wrinkled hands trembling slightly as he poured tea. I've waited a long time for someone to come for the truth, he said quietly. Evelyn was brilliant, but she was dangerous. She believed love, pain, and guilt were flaws, things to be engineered out of people. I leaned forward. Tell me about my father, Langford sighed, eyes clouding. Robert Hastings was one of the best engineers I ever met. He joined Evelyn's research program in '98. At first, he thought it was about medical applications, helping soldiers forget trauma. But Evelyn's goals changed. She wanted control, not healing. I swallowed hard. And me? He hesitated. We're never supposed to be involved, but your father refused to continue her project. Evelyn threatened to cut his funding and ruin his name. When he tried to destroy her research, she brought you in, used you as leverage. She claimed it was a harmless neural test to map memory responses in children. But when he resisted, she made him watch. My hands trembled. Made him watch what? Langford's eyes filled with guilt. The procedure, on you. Adrian reached for my hand as the air left my lungs. You were only 8. She erased certain memories, ones linked to that night. When your father tried to expose her, there was an accident at the lab, fire, explosion. But we both know Evelyn never left things to chance. I felt the tears burn my eyes. So she killed him and erased it from me. Langford nodded slowly. And she told everyone it was an accident. I kept quiet because she threatened my family. Adrian clenched his jaw, fury simmering beneath his grief. She destroyed everyone who stood in her way. Langford looked at me again. But Evelyn wasn't perfect. Her device wasn't either. Memories can't be truly erased, they can only be buried. If you want to see what she took from you, I can help you recover it. That night, I lay on the reclined chair in Langford's dimly lit lab, a heart monitor beeping softly beside me. Electrodes traced along my temples, a headset humming faintly with static. Adrian stood nearby, his hand clutching mine. Are you sure about this? He whispered. I nodded. If I don't face the past, it'll keep owning me. Langford adjusted a dial. We'll access the dormant neural pathways. You might see fragments, not all pleasant, but they're yours. He pressed a button. The world began to fade. I was 8 again. The lab glowed white and cold. My father knelt beside me, holding my shoulders. His face was streaked with tears. It's going to be okay, sweetheart, he whispered. Daddy S. here. Behind him, Evelyn stood with that same sharp calm she carried her whole life. You're overreacting, Robert, she said. It's a harmless test. She won't even remember. I don't care what you promise, he shouted. She's my daughter. Evelyn's eyes darkened. You're a liability. Suddenly, 2 men in lab coats restrained him. My small voice echoed, Daddy. he thrashed, screaming. Emily, don't look at her, don't let her. A blinding light filled the room. I cried out. My father's voice faded, replaced by Evelyn's calm whisper in my ear. You'll thank me one day, dear, I'm giving you freedom from pain. And then darkness. I woke up with a scream. Adrian caught me as I trembled, sobbing uncontrollably. It's okay, you're safe, he whispered. But I was, because now I remembered everything. Evelyn hadn't just destroyed my father, she had rewritten me. Langford turned off the monitors, his expression grave. She implanted a neural block in your hippocampus. It's been suppressing those memories for years, but now they're awake. I pressed my palms to my face. She made me her experiment. She took my life and called it love. Adrian's voice shook. She didn't win, Emily. You survived her. The next day, we stood in Evelyn's old office, now stripped bare. The portraits were gone, the air strangely hollow. I set her final letter on the desk and read it one last time. The real question is whether Emily knew the truth, it's whether she remembers. I whispered, I remember now. And with that, I set it aflame. The paper curled, turned black, and crumbled into ash. Adrian wrapped his arm around me, his voice steady. It's over. But I shook my head. No, it's just beginning. Weeks passed. I gave my statement to investigators, reopening the case around Evelyn's accidents. Dr. Langford provided the files she'd hidden. Coal Industries cleared my father's name publicly. For the first time, the truth was free. Samuel came to visit one afternoon. I saw the press conference, he said softly. You did what none of us could, ended her cycle. I smiled faintly. Maybe ending it means forgiving her. He frowned. After everything she did. Yes, I said quietly, because forgiveness isn't for her, it's for us. That night, Adrian and I stood in the garden again, beneath a sky streaked with stars. The roses had begun to bloom, their petals bright and alive. She's gone, Adrian said, but her shadow will always linger. I nodded. Maybe, but now it's just a shadow. He smiled, pulling me close. You know, she once said love makes people dangerous. And she was right, I whispered. But not in the way she thought. Love made us strong enough to survive her. We stood there for a long time, the air still, the night peaceful. Later, before I went inside, I looked back one last time. Evelyn Cole had built her empire on power and fear. But she'd forgotten something fundamental. Truth doesn't stay buried forever. And though she'd tried to erase my past, she had unknowingly given me a gift, the power to reclaim it. As the wind stirred through the roses, I whispered, Goodbye, Evelyn. I remember everything now. And for the first time in years, I felt completely free.